feels like it still rankles with you, certainly having read the book, that social workers got all the criticism when doctors, health professionals, the police also made numerous visits to the little boy.
Yes, it doesn't wrangle with me. I think it's something we have to know and understand. I have never used blame against blame. Yeah, blame is not part of my psyche, really. It's not something I've ever used.
But you do in the book. You blame the politicians, you blame the media, you blame the police for private briefing, which you say contributes to misleading the public. You do blame those
I would really
areas.
contest your use of your interpretation. I don't blame. What you find in the book is a real emphasis on understanding, yeah, and I really set that out at the beginning, that we need to stand back and understand what happened here. I need to understand too, yeah, and I need to accept the public's reaction because of what they were told, what they did understand. So no, I would contest that it's blame. It's the serious issue here is how we responded to Peter's death and how we tackle this kind of crime. I give the statistics, and you've quoted them this morning. You know, there's one child every week dies. Now, that is not general knowledge in our population. People don't know that. Yeah, we have a lot of general knowledge about lots of other things, but not this. We don't put that kind of information out there. And I think the serious issue here, and what the book is trying to say, is this is something we have to come to terms with. We have to face this one and try to understand it. And this just simply blaming social workers isn't going to get us anywhere. In fact, it's making the situation worse, because the social work profession is just under siege all of the time. Yeah, it's become, I feel, quite fragile, quite fear of failure. I push social workers everywhere I go to try and join a single independent professional organisation that can support them and protect them. But if you make such an important profession fearful, which I think is what we've done here, I mean, they meet me and think, oh my goodness, you know, we couldn't believe what happened. We live in horror that is going to happen to one of us. And I have social workers in contact with me, only one yesterday, saying, please, could I talk to you about what's happening to me? And this is happening today, it's happening now. At the same time, I'd want to add, Victoria, that there are these professionals are out there today, and they're at this moment making decisions which are life and death. Yeah, and I think it's time we faced up to that. It's time we understood it, and it's time we got behind the social work profession.
Okay. I wonder, and you may not like this question, I put this to you. I wonder if your book is looking for conspiracy theories when none exist, arguing that this relationship between the politicians at the time, the Sun newspaper, a bit of briefing from the Metropolitan Police at the time, somehow manipulated the public into thinking that social workers were to blame for Peter Connolly's death, when they knew he died at the hands of his mother. They knew he was on the at-risk register in your borough. They knew his death happened on your watch, and therefore it can legitimately be argued that you should accept some responsibility for that.
Well, there are a number of issues there. If you accept that one child a week is dying in this way, yeah, and that those children will either be on an at-risk register or not, but they'll exist somewhere and be attached to some local authority or some borough, are we going to sack a director of children's services every time a child dies?
No,
and where would that take us?
Because it is different, because in this case it was on your watch when the child was subject to a child protection plan.
Yes, but my point still stands, does it not? You know, many children die, and I don't want to, say this lightly. It is a horrific crime, yeah? But it is happening, and the point I'm making to you is, if this is how we're going to react to it, no one's going to do this job. no one's going to be a director of a children's service. I was entirely responsible and accountable in that I followed government guidelines to look in some detail as to what the conduct was of social workers. And I have to remind you that social workers were never struck off by their own regulator. The social workers at the heart of this case are still social workers today, not practicing, but they're still social workers. That gives you some idea of what the issues were for them. But you say conspiracy theory. I took years to come to terms with the evidence that I had obtained through the court system, years to realise what it was and what it was saying. And the most difficult set of documents that I looked at were the 17 drafts of the Ofsted report. And my analysis, which took place over years, and I used other people to look at it and say, is what I have analysed here and written actually what is there, or am I being, imagining this? Which goes to the heart of your question. And they say, no, it's here. The evidence is there, and I make reference to it in my book. And it's allowed me to say, and it's an important point, that the report that Ed Balls is referring to in your clip, that was so appalling, was actually written by Ofsted's top team. It wasn't written by the inspectors who came to Haringey. And it was written by Ofsted's top team in conjunction with some of Ed Balls' civil servants. They were giving steers. Make sure there's a clear attribution of responsibility, because they felt they were dealing with an absolute upsurge of emotion among the public, which they were.
And you argue that once you'd been sacked, effectively, that sort of closed things down.
Yes, they thought
took the emotion out.
They began to feel that there was only one way out of this, and this was to get me, to sack me. And indeed, we now understand, and there's evidence in the Levinson inquiry, that Rebecca Brooks rang Ed Balls. And we're led to believe that this was to say, either sack Shoesmith or we'll turn this thing on you.
Okay.
People have lost their way.
Okay. I want to read some comments. As people have heard you speak this morning, and most of them are essentially, I'll read one, it's representative. This tweet from Phillips, Sharon Shoesmith is overplaying the victim here. It's enough. Tweet from Stephen, when you are head of children's services, then you do have to take responsibility, Sharon. And Paul thinks that you are shameless, his words.
Right, well, I would urge them to read the book and to read what is set out there.
Okay.
Yeah. I respect their views. They were led in a direction with information that simply wasn't.
They might think that's rather a patronising view of them. They are able to make up their own minds.
Well, I think the tabloid media can be incredibly, incredibly persuasive.
And the British public can be pretty bright and intelligent.
Well, I'm quite sure there will be people who would support my view as well. Okay. I haven't come on the programme to dissuade the British public. I respect their view, actually. If what they were told was absolutely true, that social workers stood by and watched the torture of a child, they're absolutely entitled to say everything like that to me again and again.
Thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharon Shoesmith.